This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Ryan Humphreys.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. This show is brought to you by Stealthy Hunter. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton.
I'm Mo.
Good to have you back in the old office here.
Yeah, here we are again.
Not the Oval Office.
No, not the Oval Office, but a lot's been happening in the Oval Office lately.
Yes, it has. That's part of the reason why we're doing this episode here today. Part of our discussion is going to be about some changes that are coming to Alaska.
Yep.
And this is the time of year where we have some scheduled interviews coming up, but we had a little downtime, and, well, we just kind of wanted to chat about what's been going on. Starting from the top down.
I mean, yeah.
From the tippity top of the government.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, because you asked me the other day, like, hey, what should this episode be about, right?
Yeah.
Because we got the scheduled time coming up here, and we're running out of time. and and I was thinking, like, I just was like, I just don't want to just do, like you said, I didn't want to do another episode. We were just talking about whatever.
Yeah.
And I also just didn't want to talk about something just because.
Just to fill a slot.
Just to fill a slot because it was winter time.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's like, it just, like, that stuff gets old.
Yeah.
And
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's something that we said right at the beginning of this is in episode 1 is if we don't have anything interesting to talk about, we're just not going to put an episode out.
Yeah. Well, there's always something interesting to talk about. It's just not filling it with just stuff just because it seems to fit the time of year.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, so that there's some current events going on kind of in the governing powers that be. Thank goodness that we've seen some changes. And if you can't tell who we voted for by now, then time to switch podcasts. But in other news...
Or, just for some damage control here, we really don't get into politics in the podcast except for where it specifically relates to hunting, fishing in Alaska.
Right.
I say fishing. We don't even hardly talk about fishing, but I'm sure we will here and there.
Yeah.
But this, if you follow me on X, I'm very, very political. I think I shared the podcast on there a while back and said, trust me, if you don't like my politics, it's not what this is about. Yeah. I mean, we're not ashamed of our political stance, but that's not what this show is about. And if you can get over the fact that we support somebody you don't support, we can all move along like regular Americans should.
Well, and this is something that we've talked about before in other forms during the time of the previous administration. And these are basically just things that trickle down that affect us.
Yep.
And so that's what we're talking about today and kind of what we might see coming down the pipeline and some changes that could be happening. Well, some changes that are already happening and what you should kind of be aware of and things that could end up on the ballot here in the next couple of years. Potentially vote on a few things. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little later in the episode. But before that, SHOT Show happened.
Yeah. I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to that.
Me neither, but there's been a few things that, the number one thing didn't even happen at SHOT Show. It was kind of an online release ordeal, and that was the new cartridge from Federal. The 7 backcountry.
Yeah, that.
The whole, the steel case has, no pun intended, blown open. Now is making waves. Good and bad.
Yeah.
It seemed like on the release day of that cartridge that, a lot of the hunting media people were putting out videos and shooting it and posting hunts that they'd gone on with it and promoting it, which is all part of the marketing, from the companies. And a bunch of rifle manufacturers came out with rifles and, announced that. And that's unique that for those reasons that we'll get into here in a few minutes, that's a unique situation where they had to come up with some new ideas to fit this cartridge. So the 7 backcountry is using what they call a peak alloy case. And it's some kind of a steel blend.
Steel and brass, and it's an alloy, which means
Right.
there's multiple kinds of metal
Right.
mixed into a slurry.
Well, that's a good way to dumb it down for folks like us.
Yeah, right.
But the whole idea around it is chamber pressure
Mm-hmm.
and being able to increase chamber pressure
Right.
to get more performance out of the similar size case that they were looking to get out of this particular cartridge, and not having to use a case, say like an Ultramag, that uses so much powder
Right.
to get the same type of results.
Well, I think the primary idea was to take we have kind of seems like we've maxed out efficiency in cartridges
Okay.
in the market, right? The market is
Okay.
flooded with new efficient rounds
Mm-hmm.
from 7 millimeters to 30 cals to 338s and 6 mil and 6.5 and everything in between.
I think there's a few things that are still coming.
Sure, but I think you get what I mean. When
Yes.
it comes to modern efficiency, shorter barrel, like
Yeah.
it's popular,
Right.
and so
right.
it's maximizing what you can do with the with the modern efficiency, with the right amount of powder without going Ultramag style. Because once you go Ultramag, you lose efficiency when you burn a certain. Once you over, it's called overbore for a reason.
Yep.
And you're burning just way more powder than you're actually getting return.
Sure.
And so this, I think, is the natural direction for things to go. You've got to change something else.
Exactly. Yeah, and so this kind of, I don't know if this is directly connected to it. I've heard some opinions about this, but a few years ago when the 277 Fury came out from
Right.
SIG, that whole bid going to the military contract, I've heard that Federal had something to present that didn't make it.
Yeah. This
And
was
there's
similar
rumors
to
that this was one of the ideas. It might not have been this exact cartridge that they presented.
Right,
Obviously, that's the 7 backcountry is not an AR round, but it could have been something using a case design like this. But we saw the 277 with the steel head. Is it pure steel or is it some kind of an alloy?
As far as I know, it's a stainless steel head on the case.
Okay. But it
With like
has
a crimp ring that grabs the back of the rest of the case.
But the rest of the case is made out of
Brass. Yeah.
And so you have a more reloadable case, it would seem
Mm-hmm.
like. And again, I know very little, if any, about the 277 Fury. You're the one that had the micro obsession with that.
I read it. I went through the...
Yeah. But that was kind of, at least for us, that was the first time that we'd ever seen this hybridized use of steel in a case before to this degree. Of course, we've always seen cheap steel case ammo like from... I don't know, Wolf, or what wasn't Tool.
I don't know.
I thought Tool, and it was spelled like T-U-L.
Thule?
Thule, maybe?
Maybe.
I don't know.
My backpack is a Thule.
Well, that's T-H-U-L-E.
I know, so I have no idea.
And I could be wrong on that. But, for sure, Wolf, which
Right.
you can't even get anymore because, well, that's Russian. But, but that ammunition was always real cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we always didn't want to run that in a rifle because we were always told that that's abrasive on the action and it's bad.
Yeah,
for your
well,
weapon
and you're not going to get good consistency.
cheap,
And
right.
if you have an AK or an AR, it's one thing just to go dump some ammo.
But it wasn't the use of a steel or steel alloy to get higher chamber pressures.
No, make it cheap.
You just make it cheap. And so with the use of the 277 Fury having a steel head on the case to be able to increase chamber pressure, which off the top of your head, do you know what the max pressure is on a 277 Fury?
80,000 PSI.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because the chamber pressure on the 7 backcountry is also
I know.
80,000 PSI.
Yeah.
But they didn't use a brass case and a steel head stamp, or a head stamp, a steel head. They used a totally steel alloy case, top to bottom.
Yeah.
From neck to primer end.
Right.
And there's a lot of discussions going on, a lot of quite hilarious nicknames for the 7 backcountry going around
I
the
haven't
internet.
seen that. So I
It's
read,
hilarious.
I saw it briefly before talked to me about it or we talked about it. And I think I read an Outdoor Life article.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it a ton.
Yeah.
I talked to you later about it and you told me some of the pros and cons
Mm-hmm.
of what were going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
Well, they released it under the idea that you can get a heavier weight class bullet
Yeah.
out of 7mm,
Out of a
right?
shorter barrel.
Out of a shorter barrel going at magnum velocity.
Yeah.
Right. So the newest addition to the 284 world has been the 7PRC, and that has done extremely well. Right. There have been some, I don't know if you could call it bad press, but there have been some people that are unsatisfied with some of the velocities that they're getting out of factory ammunition.
I think justly so, and some of the things that we even have seen personally in rifles we've shot.
Yes. And so that they've had some issues with the factory ammunition, and I don't want to say issues as if it's inaccurate or inconsistent, but inconsistent in that they're not, or at least they weren't at one point, shooting as fast as they were originally upon the release of the 7PRC. And so that was creating a little bit of, a stir online.
Yep.
But it wasn't really a problem with the rifles or the chambering. It was just that it wasn't shooting as fast anymore with this factory ammo, and people weren't aware of why.
Yeah.
And so supposedly, and again, I don't know the answer to this, but supposedly there was some kind of a propellant change in the factory ammo,
right?
And it just wasn't shooting as fast. But it's still, despite that little stretch where that was going on, because I haven't heard anything about that in quite a while.
I haven't either.
Despite that, it is still one of the better 284s on the market, if not the best, in that velocity range, right? And that's designed to have a little bit tighter twist barrel than factory rifle, relatively efficient case.
Yep.
You're not having a lot of what you talked about earlier, like with overbore.
Yep.
You're not going to be burning out a barrel as fast as something like a 7 Ultra Mag. But you had to have a barrel length of around 24 inches to get that velocity. And so the 7PRC was originally released as shooting 175 grain ELDX at about 3,000 feet a second.
Yeah.
Out of, I believe it was a 24-inch barrel, which is pretty standard, right?
Yeah.
Well, the 7 backcountry is advertised to shoot 175 grain class bullet at 3,000 feet a second with factory ammo out of a 20-inch barrel.
Right.
And so like you mentioned there, the whole trend that we've seen with rifles lately, and a lot of companies are doing this, is they're making shorter barreled rifles to accommodate the uptick in suppressor ownership.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to have, right? Like having a 7 or 8 inch suppressor on the end of a 24, 26 inch barrel rifle gets pretty long.
Well, and I think there's a big thing too, even minus suppressors, shorter rifles are becoming popular in general.
Yeah.
But people just don't want to make that velocity sacrifice.
Right. And so this 7 backcountry with the new case design, having the higher chamber pressures allows you to get more out of the cartridge and attain that velocity even while having a 20-inch barreled rifle, which is, you put an 8-inch suppressor on it, and now it's like putting a muzzle brake on a 26-inch barrel rifle.
Right.
So you're not really sacrificing much in the terms of
but it's
handling.
removable, so
right, exactly. Yeah. And they came out with, I believe it was 2 offerings of the Terminal Ascent factory ammo loading. I think there's a 155 and a 170. I believe is right.
I think that's right.
And then they had a 175 Fusion tipped, which is their bonded polymer tip bullet. I shot my first moose with a Federal Fusion out of a 300 Win Mag. It performs like any other bonded bullet. It seems to be a great bullet. And anytime I ever had to shoot Fusions, or I say had to shoot, I've shot Fusions a few times, like for a barrel break-in process, because they're cheap and they're easy to find, or at least they were. But then they came out with the tipped Fusion, and they seem to be doing real well. I've seen a lot about them. They seem to shoot real well. And that seems to be the bullet that shoots the best out of that 7 backcountry from the shooting that I've seen on some of the videos that I've watched. And then they came out with a 195 grain Burger bullet.
Yeah.
Factory loading. Which, love or hate Burger bullets. It's big and heavy and has a pretty high BC, but we're not really a big fan of Burger bullets in general.
I think if you were going to buy this as a anti-personnel sniper rifle, that'd be your ideal choice.
Well, sure, but
that's not really what the design is.
That's not really what it's advertised.
But that could have come from some of the military contract idea, potentially.
Yeah.
So I think the 7 backcountry itself, obviously under a different name, may have itself been something that they tried to submit, not necessarily for the same purpose, because multiple weapons systems were up for
renewal or something.
Were up for a contract that they had. They were the NSW or something like that. New squad weapons program thing, and so they wanted new machine guns. They wanted new squad automatic, like a SAW
Did SIG get that contract?
I believe SIG got that contract as well with the same cartridge.
That sounds familiar.
I believe. I don't know that for sure, but I believe it's the same cartridge, just a heavier gun.
Right.
Put down more fire.
Yeah, clear the streets.
Yeah.
But with that 195 Burger bullet, I know some people up here that have shot that 195 out of like a 28 Nosler for years.
Okay.
And I know somebody that's shot a few moose with them. And it's done fine. His moose are dead as a doornail. I'm pretty sure that he shot his moose with that again this year.
Oh, really?
It might have been a 7 Psalm though this year.
Okay.
But yeah, 28 Nosler. I know he's at least shot a couple moose with it. You could figure out who I'm talking about. But yeah, there's guys that like that 195 Burger bullet out of a 284 that can run it right with the right twist barrel and they like the Burger bullets, and that's fine. So they released it because that bullet has been very popular in some of the 284s offered in the past. But the 7 backcountry is now being measured up against the 7 PRC.
Yep.
And so now there's guys, they're doing little comparisons about a 20-inch PRC versus a 20-inch 7 backcountry, and what's the real difference, and what's your actual loss, and okay, now let's calculate your lost velocity out to 1,000 yards, and does that really make any difference on bullet performance? Yeah. Is a 7 PRC with a 20-inch barrel still pushing that bullet fast enough to kill at 1,000 yards, and which of course is all these hypothetical extremes.
Yeah.
But it's fun, and it's
the gun world. Especially the hunting rifle world,
right?
And anything new, that's what everybody's always looking at.
It's interesting to see.
It is. It's fun to look at the numbers.
But one of the crutches of the 7 backcountry, at least right now, seems to be the availability to reload it,
which seems, from what I've heard, non-existent
for right now.
Which it wouldn't surprise me if they came out with a way to do it. But so we're talking an all steel case. That's steel. It just, had to put that in there.
Good one.
Somebody might get that. Anyhow, but it's an all steel case. And so were there some accuracy issues you talked about at one point?
Several people, and
they have a theory with that.
Right. So there are a few different channels that weren't really part of the official release necessarily, that I was watching videos of guys shooting the rifle. And it seemed like the terminal ascent bullet loadings, heavier and lighter version, were not shooting as well as the 175 tipped Fusion. That seemed like the bullet that shot the best. I don't think I've seen anybody that's shot the 195 Burgers yet, but I signed up for the federal texts.
Oh, did you?
Because when I saw the teasing for it, and I kind of had some early information that somehow leaked and wasn't supposed to be out there. But anyway, when I found out about it, I thought, well, I'd kind of like to read this one as soon as it comes out. I'm just curious. And so I signed up for the texts. And so I just got an email or a text recently, just a couple days ago, that now their first rollout of ammo is, in fact, that 175 tipped Fusion. And that's what's available, at least right now, for the factory ammo. And so from everything that I saw, it seemed like that 175 tipped Fusion was the bullet that shot the best out of it. Now, that's not anything new necessarily.
Right.
That terminal ascent has struggled with some accuracy issues before. For instance, even in my 7 Rem mag, I bought and tried to shoot the 155 terminal ascent a few years ago out of that rifle, and that rifle will eat anything that I've put through it for the most part. And there have been a couple exceptions, but it's always shot very reasonably well with factory ammo and a wide variety of it. But that 155 in a 7 Rem mag just did not shoot well. And so that's not the first time that I've heard of accuracy issues with that terminal ascent. But I don't think that necessarily the 175 tip Fusion is a bad option by any means. It seems like a fine bullet. But yeah, that's the Outdoor Life article
Yeah,
there.
this is the one, Jon Snow. This is the one that I had read, and he did shoot the 195 burgers.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if he did or not.
I think he was getting, he said 2864.
Okay.
Muzzle velocity.
20-shot group spread of 1.47.
It was, aside from the 175 Fusions, it was the best shooting bullet, which no real surprises there.
0.47 mean radius. 5-shot group average 1.008. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you can see the data from the 155.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot about the 168 Barnes LRX
That's right,
loading
that's
as
right.
well. Yes. Yeah, and I think that 168 is probably a great bullet for it too.
Probably is. It looks like it did really well as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that they included that one in there. There's not a ton of factory ammo available with that bullet.
Yeah. So my thought on the accuracy issues, obviously, I don't know what the I don't know. I feel like with that steel case, you're going to get, and maybe I'm completely off on this, but you're going to inconsistent expansion in the chamber, perhaps. Maybe I don't know enough about it. But even if you could reload it, would it be consistent expansion the second time around?
Yeah. So yeah, there's another podcast out there that's already done an episode about this specific thing, and they came at it from the approach of they're not really a fan of it. They kind of came to the conclusion of it's a cool idea, but it's got its issues. And I'm sure this is the first of several that Federal's going to release of this design.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm sure a 6.5 or a 300 is coming.
Especially if this sells.
Right.
Which it probably will.
Yeah, exactly. This will sell. The factory ammo is a little more expensive than average factory ammo is for brass cases. But I'm sure it'll sell. But it was designed, at least this seems to be the case, it seems to be designed around shooting factory ammo.
Yeah, which there's plenty of people that's all they want to do.
Sure, absolutely.
And this gives somebody a little bit more capability in a factory setup than they would have in a custom setup with a reloaded ammo.
Right. And this is kind of the last thing I'll say on it. This seems to be a common theme with the guys that have actually shot these rifles, is that the areas that they've struggled in with accuracy, everybody seems to say that their opinion is it has to slow down a little bit to get a little bit more accuracy. They think that it's a little bit too hopped up with especially some of the lighter bullets, and that they think that accuracy will improve if they go down in speed a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if anything is tweaked or adjusted with that over time, or if when guys start reloading for it, if they tone it down a little bit and see what that does to their overall accuracy and see if that improves at all.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Right. Adjusting velocity is, for us, that's rarely ever the case. Usually when we go to reload a cartridge, we're reloading to find how fast we can push it before we hit pressure, not necessarily to see an accuracy group out of velocity.
Yeah, mostly just trying to find a consistent velocity that's easy to hit. You're not all over the board with a certain powder load.
Yeah.
Powder charge.
Right.
That's the primary thing we look for if we have an issue. Right. Otherwise, we usually don't pay attention. But sometimes you just get a really big velocity jump with a particular powder charge, and so you want to bring that standard deviation down. But which usually, just with a good scale is all it takes is to do that. But so obviously, like I said, this was developed originally to try to meet that DoD.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I can confirm that.
That is the case. That is the case. Okay. It's right. I just pulled it up to double check, but that was the case. It was to meet the trying to get the same contract that SIG did. If it was for the exact same guns or whatever, I don't know, and it could have been, because if you look at the 7 backcountry in the 277 Fury, the 277 Fury is essentially, because you can buy non 80,000 PSI cartridges for the SIG Fury.
Oh, you can?
277 Fury. Yeah, they have some in Alaska ammo right now, and they're just a soft point hunting bullet, and they're just a regular brass case, and they just 63 or 64,000 PSI or whatever they are, and it's just essentially it's a neck down 308.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then they
have
what
the velocity is on those.
It's not too terrible. I don't remember at the moment.
Is
I'm
it
sure
SIG
we can
ammo?
pull it out. Yeah. I don't think anybody but SIG is making anything for the Fury right now.
Oh, okay.
But I was looking into the SIG Fury probably 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Really getting into it.
It was early on.
When the contract, I think it was before they had won the contract.
Okay.
When I originally saw it, and then I think I saw, they got the contract, and, the Army is slowly going to bring these weapons in, and who knows what's all going to happen, especially with the change of leadership. And they might say, okay, this is too much money for what we're getting, and maybe we need something different, and maybe the military-industrial complex isn't going to get what it wants. I don't know what's going to happen with all of that. But it is an excellent weapon system that they came up with, and from everything I can see, it's a great cartridge.
And that's the SIG MCX Spear.
The MCX, the new MCX Spear. Yeah. And then they also have another, like I said, another light machine gun that goes with that, I believe, that I think shoots the same cartridge. But the whole idea of it was, most of the enemy will have stronger body armor in the future, and we need to be able to have something that's going to be able to defeat that better than a 5.56. Not that we will stop using a 5.56, just that we'll have something else as an alternative as well, depending on the combat application.
Switch training to John Wick and just go headshots.
I mean, there's that too, right? If Keanu Reeves can train to do that, then anybody can, right?
Well, there you go.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't mean to sidetrack you there.
You did, and then it got me thinking about something else, and I'm not going to go down that road with my new coworker who's a former soldier. And we were talking about accuracy in the Army the other day. But on to the topic of the 277 Fury and the 7mm BC or backcountry.
Yeah.
What I like about these is I've always been super into tech, right? Case in point in front of me, I've got the folding phone from Samsung. Still run into people that don't look at it and say, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And I actually, on the way in the mail is the new non-folding phone because I decided to go back for a while. Just see. But I like new tech. I like fancy stuff, both in this and in the shooting world. And I really like where this is going. The 7 backcountry isn't anything I'm really interested in myself. Primarily because I can't do anything to reload. And there's not really a wide set of options for factory ammo. What I like with something that I might shoot a lot of factory ammo in is something like a 30-06 where everybody makes something, or a 300 Win Mag where everybody makes an option. And I'm not relying on Federal to have loads on the shelf when I need them and for them to actually be the ones that I want.
Right. Yeah,
and that's the problem with something like this.
Yep.
If I can reload for it, then that's not an issue.
Right.
Because then I can make what I want if I can't find it. But if I
gets real exclusive real fast.
It does. And hopefully they can meet the demand and there's not an issue. And they may very well be able to. And I hope them great success with this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it will fit a part of the market that really maybe even hasn't been tapped for this type of a idea. So I don't like it in that respect, though, personally. What I do like is the same thing with the 277 Fury, which I will own one day.
Yeah.
But is that they're changing the game more than it's ever been changed before. I mean, for the Fury to come out and be or the 6.8x51 to come out and be this 80,000 PSI, and all these people were, it'll never work. Well, they won the contract and they're producing the ammo and they're selling their guns. And
so do you think that SIG dropped the ball by not getting the 277 Fury in SIG Cross hunting rifle and more hunting ammunition to the public market sooner?
No.
Rather...
Because that's not SIG's market. SIG doesn't pursue the hunting market very strongly at all.
Yeah. Do you think that they will ramp up production and availability now to compete in the hunting market with a 7 backcountry?
I think they will. I think they know they have, there's people like me who are going to see it and want it.
Yeah.
But their goal is to fulfill their DoD contracts.
Sure.
And there's a lot more money there than there is in the private sector.
Absolutely.
When it comes to this stuff. Our tax dollars at work, right?
Right.
But in the end of the day, it is our tax dollars that are bringing us stuff like the 7 backcountry, because it wouldn't exist for this, for the same program, it wouldn't exist either.
Yeah.
And what I'm excited here is if SIG was able to do their thing, and if Federal's doing their thing here, Either we're going to find out in the next few years that this higher PSI just doesn't work, or we're going to see relatively soon more crazy ideas. And maybe people are actually going to step out and do some stuff out of their comfort zone and trying to push the limits of everything that we have. And I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, because I think one thing with the 277 Fury is it does require a bit of a stronger chamber.
Yes.
Whereas the 7 backcountry is not supposed to.
7 backcountry does.
Does it as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to primarily be contained within the case on the 7 backcountry. And the SIG's supposed to contain it within the head.
I'm sorry. I got that backwards. I was thinking about the 7.7 Fury. Yes. So
Okay.
Yeah. So the 7 backcountry, you're right on that. It's supposed to be largely contained within the case itself.
Right.
Which there are, and you can read a lot more information than we're giving you here from other people that have actually gotten the rifles and shot them, about some of the issues encountered with some of the firings and some of the case issues, at least on a preliminary scale that have been encountered, at least at this stage of the game. And as the ammo hits the shelves and as the rifles get purchased throughout this year, I'm very interested to see the field results.
Yeah.
And just see what people encounter in the field. Does the case rust? It's a steel case, right?
It is, but it's an alloy too.
Is there going to be any corrosion issues?
I don't know. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah. And there are some issues already that have been, well, I say issues, but it's not an issue if you don't reload, but some primers that when you extract the case after firing, the primers are sticking out. And so that there seems to be some issues there.
On reloading specifically or factory as well?
On factory. Yeah.
The primer's sticking out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's very interesting. Again, stuff that really is completely new to us, but it's just interesting to kind of hash it out. And there's another question that I have for you is with the Fury, what's the max bullet weight in the hunting options that you can get? Is it 150 class?
I believe it's close to that. It's from SIG. As far as I know, they're the only ones making ammo for it.
Okay.
Let me just pull up their website and look at the ammo options.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see that.
I think it might be a 140. No, there's a 150 hybrid hunter.
Burger bullet?
No, I believe it's a SIG bonded. It's a Nosler AccuBond.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that looks like a Nosler AccuBond.
I don't think they said originally that it was a Nosler. They just said it was bonded.
So what is the velocity on that?
The advertised velocity on that.
And is that the steel case head as well?
Yes. 16-inch barrel, 2830.
24 is 3120.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy impressive for
this is something
for a 150 grain bullet.
Right.
A bonded bullet
out of that little case.
Yeah.
And can you reload the 27 Fury?
From what I understand, easily.
Okay. This is
SIG said, I don't know if I haven't found anybody who's done it yet, and now that it's more widely available, possibly you can.
Yeah.
There is people who have done it, but SIG has said from the beginning that it is fully reloadable.
Okay. To me, if I was given the option, you're either going to shoot a 277 Fury or a 7 backcountry for a hunting rifle. I don't think there's anything in North America that I would feel undergunned with 277 Fury compared to the 7 backcountry.
Right.
Even with a heavier bullet, a 150 AccuBond going almost 3,000 feet a second, give or take, is plenty to kill anything in North America. Yeah. So you have the ability to reload this.
As far as I know, yeah.
And it's a short action, right?
Basically, I mean, it's like a 308.
Yeah. That's interesting to me. That's, kind of makes my vote go for the Fury here.
Yeah, now it's just the thing, like, so they have their hunter bullet cartridge right here.
Right.
And so it's not that they're not marketing it to hunters. They're just not really spending a lot of money in the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
And it might just be that they're working it all out, Oh, here's a new one.
Hunter.
I mean, that might not be specifically for the 277. That might just be for other things that they make ammo for.
Okay.
That looks like a 300 win, actually.
Is that just
7
nickel
mil.
brass?
I mean, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it looks like nickel brass. Yeah, I like nickel brass. It's awfully slippery to feed.
Yeah, see, there's the...
Yes.
You can't see this on the video, but...
Sig Fury hybrid.
Yeah, so that's the case, is the hybrid case, but that's the gun. That's the LMG, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sweet, doesn't it?
Interesting, yeah.
So there's the soft point. It's a 130 grain, just with a regular brass case.
Yes, that's not the steel head.
And they're advertising that at a muzzle velocity of 27 out of a 16-inch barrel.
The 130 grain bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see the difference there in
Yeah.
velocity for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's really
And
cool
they
what we're
have
seeing. Hybrid
55
match.
Hybrid match. Hybrid hunter. Yeah.
So,
So,
so that's new. I hadn't seen the hybrid match before.
Yeah.
And you can actually buy military like ball ammo by the case.
And that's
Available too. That's a 113
113
hybrid
grain.
ball.
Wow, that's cooking.
Yeah, and I believe that's a hybrid case, and it's a 113. So what is the velocity? Just because I want to know.
Right.
3,200 out of a 16-inch barrel. And you can buy how many rounds?
500.
460 rounds for $1,300. Whew.
Grab me a buck, Clark.
I guess if you have a SIG Connect subscription, it's $11.60.
Yeah, that's a deal.
Oh yeah.
Snatch it up.
Oof.
Anyway, in other news from SHOT Show, now that we spent enough time, what started out as a 7 backcountry discussion turned into a 277
A little bit of a
Fury.
nerd out on the new. I don't know. I like getting into that stuff.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've talked about that.
Well,
and looked into that a little bit more. Now I'm probably going to go home and spend
Yeah.
half my night reading about it again.
Well, I remember when you were first looking into the 277 Fury,
Yeah.
and we were talking a lot about it. Like it never was. It never seemed like something that I wouldn't be interested in. I just wasn't interested in it because I couldn't get a rifle on it right then.
Yeah.
But I would absolutely get a SIG Cross in 277 Fury.
I don't know if anybody else is even making a rifle in it right now.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Not
Not that I've heard, but I haven't been looking, you know.
SIG obviously is. But
Yeah, that there's a barrel. Does that, I don't know if that comes in a 277
so
Fury or not.
this one is specifically, they make a specific cross for the 277 Fury.
Sure.
And that's a 20-inch barrel. So you're going to be,
And is that, yeah, that one's a steel barrel.
that's
yeah.
runs about $2,000.
Which, that's not,
No, for a hunting rifle is.
no, that's,
They've got the new Sawtooth short action, which I think is like a more of a Magnum style. It's available in a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, 16-inch barrel in the 308, 18 or 24 in the 6.5 Creedmoor.
and they have carbon options in that.
And that
one
one's
too.
that's with a carbon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're making the guns for the hunting industry. They
Oh,
really
yeah,
are.
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
it's just they don't seem to push it a lot, and it might just be because they don't feel like they need to. They send some guns to their dealers, and then their dealers sell
Well,
them.
I mean, to be fair, we've seen a lot of SIG Crosses around up here in the last couple of years.
We have. Well, that's what I
They've
mean.
popped up a lot more
but
frequently.
you don't see the ads. You don't see the big articles written about them.
Yeah.
You don't see this big release about the SIG hunting stuff because
Yeah.
you see, whenever they come out with a new pistol, there's always ads and all the new stuff. They don't push their hunting stuff a lot, but I think there's just a presence. They send the stuff to the dealers and there's enough of a presence there that it's sold. This is their Magnum.
I like the look of that muzzle brake they got on there too. That's
Yeah,
a good looking
This
design.
is
Not just a junky radial, just with a different name.
300 PRC, 24-inch barrel.
Right.
Look at that right there. Gotta have you one of them.
You know, I think I'd rather have the 277 Fury.
I mean, me
I
too,
really
but
do. I think that would make.
It's a lighter gun overall.
I think that would
for
make
sure,
a
but
really fun sheep rifle.
That's what I want it for.
Compact and deer too, but my
Well,
goodness,
in the Fury there.
it's a little bit fast for those little black-tailed deer.
Yeah, but you could
But-
shoot some lighter. You could shoot those 130s.
But we're wanting to talk about shooting deer with fast rounds.
You're one to talk about shooting deer with fast rounds. I've slowed down.
300 short mag, mister.
I said I've slowed down.
Yeah, well,
I was shooting them with a 2,700 feet per second this year. Little tiny bullet,
wasn't it 26 and change?
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice and slow.
You did a real good
Slow
job.
and small, and it did great. Didn't
Yeah.
really destroy any meat.
I should have just brought my 243 last year.
But so I mean, yeah, this SIG, this Cross 277 Fury's like, I don't remember what your folded down length is, but it's probably around 30 inches. So like, you fold that stock, throw it in your backpack.
Yeah,
If you want it out of your way,
Yeah.
especially if you're on a hike in somewhere by yourself,
yeah. Or it just folds down smaller and it just sticks out less.
Right. When you're busting brush or whatever.
Yeah, over the top of your pad.
Whatever you're doing, like however you're going to use it, like,
sure.
And it's small enough and light enough that it's not that, it's, how much does this weigh? 7.1. Nothing. It's not super light.
No.
Anyway, moving on.
You see the new pistol from Staccato?
Not really.
From SHOT Show?
You pulled it up over here, but I don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, this one I just found. I didn't really keep up with SHOT Show this year. I don't know.
I seen a few things. I saw the Keltec.
Yeah, but it's the new
Abomination they came out with.
yeah, the new stripper clip.
That's Keltec for you.
Yeah, the new stripper clip 5.7 pistol.
Right.
But this is the only one that really caught my attention, and there's probably more that I'm missing that people are more interested in. But the HD 4 and P4.5, and it did away with the grip safety.
Okay.
Of their other 2011 models, and it moved the rear sight forward to just behind the ejection port.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so it's basically made for people that want to shoot with an optic.
Right, but it takes 1.5 inches off of your distance between sights, which in theory reduces your accuracy if you're not using an optic.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, insignificantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's compatible with Glock magazines. It still has the thumb safety. Yeah. That's an interesting looking pistol.
For an exposed hammer, you need some kind of safety.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's the MSRP looking like on it?
$24.99 for the PD4, and the 4.5 is $6.99 MSRP.
You said it was cheaper. That ain't that much cheaper.
Well, yeah, I guess it's not. There's the other ones in the previous. Well,
yeah, Staccato C is $25.99.
But the
no, an XL.
The XLs are $36.
What I'm interested in, this isn't SHOT Show related specifically, but you got you've got one of their pistols, Kimber. They got the 2K11.
Seen a lot about that recently.
That looked pretty interesting, and the price on that's not. It's less than that.
Yeah, I haven't seen many guys shooting it yet. I've seen a few YouTube videos, and it seems to run fine.
Colin Muir.
Did he?
Yeah, he had it pretty early on.
Really?
Yeah.
I saw a different video on someone else shooting it, and it ran fine.
He seemed to like it a lot, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. The grip looks awfully bulky on it, doesn't it?
I don't know.
It seems a little bit disproportionately big.
I mean, theirs is a full 45, though. It's not a 9mm, right?
I think they also offer it in a 9mm.
Do they?
I thought I heard that.
Well, maybe the 45 was just what? 45 would obviously be a much bigger grip.
Right. Well, I think it's the same size.
For a double. I mean.
Yeah, it's just that you can fit a lot more rounds in the 9. Let me find out here real quick. The computer on the podcast.
Right. I mean, this is the way you do things these days, right?
I mean, this is just.
This is what the big podcasts do. Well, some of them. They bring stuff up, and I don't have a screen share thing going right now, but one of these days maybe I'll have it set up. Show people what we're looking at.
I don't want it on my computer.
Well, it wouldn't be on your computer, obviously. You
robots.
Wouldn't know how to control it.
Too much robots and AI and control my stuff.
Oh, I control all your stuff anyway.
You're not wrong.
Where'd you get that computer from?
The dump.
No, you didn't. I gave you that computer.
We traded.
Not at the time, no. No.
Wasn't it?
No.
Well, that was the other one that the keyboard quit.
That was long time ago.
Right.
Yeah, I gave you this one when that one died.
You traded me a lemon laptop that the keyboard quit on, and then you gave me this one out of pity.
Years later.
You had pity on me.
I gave you this one so you could have something to do some research on.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
You gave me this one out of guilt because your last one took a dump on me. Well, Kimber's website's not loading.
Take a tax write-off for the cost of that laptop. Kimber's website's not loading for you?
Yeah, not on my laptop.
I was trying to load a website earlier to pay a bill, and their website wouldn't load. And I was like, well, you don't want my money.
Yeah, it's free. Anyway,
it loaded up for me just fine.
It's not going to work on my laptop.
It doesn't look that bulky to me. It looks kind of deep, but I kind of like a deeper grip. It's an interesting. I like the way it looks.
Yeah, I mean, it looks nice.
Yeah. They've got 3 different models available.
I've got a friend of mine that he loves to make fun of Kimbers, right? And it seems like a lot of people do. And he said, you know what you'd have if you put a Kimber in between 2 pieces of bread? A jam sandwich.
Yeah, very funny. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't had any issues with mine yet, but I'm trying.
I see. Okay, so they do offer it. No, this one's just available in 9. Maybe it's only available in 9.
Well, that's the Target.
Yeah, but okay, so the
Yep.
Target's only available in 9. But if you buy the Target in 9 mil with the Trijicon SRO, we all know that's a very affordable sight. That whole setup with the SRO is for the Target model, which is a very pretty looking gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's $30,095.
And the capacity 9 mil is what, 17 or 20 depending on the mag.
I don't know. I'm looking for it.
Right. Magazines included
17
117 and
and
2
two
20
20s.
rounders. Yeah, that's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, there you go. There's your new carry gun.
There's no rear sight on that one.
It's probably gone because the SRO's off. Because the SRO's on there, they probably didn't include one, but there's one on this one.
Yeah.
It looks like it's attached to.
Oh,
the
I
plate.
see. Yeah. It's
So if
on
you
the
pull
plate.
the plate, it's not on there anymore. Which I don't know how I feel like about that. I like having a backup.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Not that on anything I have a optic on. I actually have suppressor height sights on, so I can see it through the optic, or co-witnessing sight. Gateway timeout.
My laptop's having a heart attack. I'll just close
Where'd
that
you get
out.
that piece of garbage lab?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, well-
all right. Well, anything else from SHOT Show you want to talk about?
No.
No? Okay.
Let's
Well,
move on to the main thing.
is this the main thing anymore? Is this
Well, if we're not interested, we're not going to talk about it, and we're interested in this.
Oh, we're interested. Yeah,
We're
we
actually
are for
borderline giddy about this
Sure. Why don't we take a break?
in some ways. Yeah, let's take a break. We'll be right back, folks. And now we're back from the break.
We are.
The main thing.
The main thing of this show after all the discussions.
The main thing that we want to talk about in this episode is the changes coming to Alaska's, well, many facets coming out of the big White House.
The Oval Office.
Well, the letter is signed as the White House.
The executive order.
Scroll the bottom.
One of the many executive orders.
It says the White House.
It says the White House on top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but look at the bottom of the letter.
The bottom of the executive order.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the White House. Oh, I see. Yes, but it was signed in the Oval Office.
Well, but on January 20th, the White House announced, or President Trump announced, unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential.
And that is the name of one of the many executive orders
Yeah.
signed into law.
Yeah. So if you go onto the White House's website, you can find under presidential actions, unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential. And it's an executive order that he signed in on the 20th of January.
Yep.
And it really undoes a lot of things that the previous administration did and signed in. And I think the biggest thing is it reopened some doors and conversations.
Yeah.
Things that had been effectively closed off and the book was closed on, and they said, no, this is not happening. And this executive order list, because there are many, reopens a lot of things. It's not so much that it is doing a lot right now. It's that we need to reopen the discussion and see what is actually possible.
And that's what almost all the executive orders were and have been since January 20th. This is coming out almost 2 weeks to the day after this was signed into law.
Right.
And really, so, as an Alaskan who's in the politics a lot, I was very interested in what this, because I was seeing all the clips, if anybody was paying attention to, the news and stuff on that day, all the clips of, Trump saying, somebody saying, oh, what's this one? And then, they would say, oh, this is, this is an executive order unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential. And he'd say, oh, that's a big one, and he'd sign it. And pass it on. And I heard that. And so I looked it up and found it on the website here and read through it and saw some things, most of which I don't really think have been covered anywhere. Maybe one of them was covered in Field and Stream, I think. I think maybe Field and Stream talked a little bit about one of these things that was in here. But I haven't seen in my circles any of it come up.
I don't read hardly any political news outside of one particular outlet,
So,
and I'm not even going to name that outlet.
Well, I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
what about in hunting side? Have you seen anything?
So that there is one article that, and I'm not taking a position on this because there's been some real back and forth that I think is a little bit childish. But there was an article put out by Outdoor Life.
Okay.
And it was real recent, and I don't have my phone.
Was it as a result of this, or
I didn't read it.
Okay.
I saw enough of the comments, but it didn't seem like it was necessarily about this executive order, but it was something to the tune of, and I'm sure you could find it on Outdoor Life's website if you looked at it.
Pull it over here.
But it was something to the tune of what these series of executive orders means to management, hunting, and something that trickled down and had an effect, or that someone deemed had an effect on hunting or conservation or land management.
Yeah.
And there was some, people saying that this article was leaning to one side of the political aisle or another. I didn't read it. I didn't get involved in taking an opinion on it. I've seen other articles come out before from whether it's Outdoor Life or Field and Stream. And when you read the article, it seems like they're just stating the facts from a nonpartisan position. And they're just saying whether or not they like the administration or the decision that they just made, they're just saying this could have a negative effect potentially in this way, even if they like the rest of the implications of that executive order or that law. They're just saying this could be a side effect of that. And so, you have the article pulled up here.
Is that the article?
Yes. Trump's order to pause federal grants causes chaos in the conservation world.
So this isn't related to even what we were going to talk about today.
Right.
This is something else.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit curious now. But
this is around, there's been a huge thing around his order to pause federal grants and how it's going to stop. Yeah, I'm not going to get into all that. But
just the subtitle here.
This is specifically about how it may cause problems with federal grants in the hunting side of things.
Yeah, so
conservation.
The only thing I'm going to read here is a subtitle is reversal of an executive order is welcome news to conservationists. State agencies and critter organizations were worried about the fact that Pittman-Robertson dollars will be cut off along with other essential programs that fund wildlife management, habitat work, and public access. Is that the beginning of a paragraph? No. Okay, that is just a subtitle.
Yeah. So Trump administration has rescinded its freeze on federal grants and loans that caused massive confusion across all sectors of the country Tuesday. Okay,
so how was that bad if he rescinded an order that could have cut off?
So I think they were worried that it would, because the initial grant was, the initial order was very wide sweeping in what it was cutting off. And the only thing basically it didn't cut off was, Social Security benefits and things like that, Medicaid, things like that.
Interesting.
So this looks like it was just more like people were worried this was going to cause a problem, but it didn't.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, at least from the surface here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go, case in point. And I saw this headline from this Outdoor Life article posted on like 15 people's channels a few days ago, like on Instagram and X, Facebook pages, and people were all up in arms.
So I wasn't even aware of this part of this, what we were talking about wasn't even on my radar till now.
No, but yeah, that's not related to Alaska specifically in that way. I mean, although Pittman-Robertson is...
This would affect Alaska.
Sure.
But
it looks like that's not the case here.
Right. So my question really was like, have you seen any articles about what we're going to talk about with Alaska?
Nope.
And somebody today mentioned to me, and I'm just going to look it up because I'm interested, that they saw an article, I think it was on Field and Stream, that was related to something of what was listed here in Alaska.
Okay.
And maybe their website's definitely not as easy to find the latest articles in.
As Outdoor Life.
Yeah, theirs was just like, conservation, here you go. So one of the things, may as well just kick it off with this. And that's and I don't see the article in Field and Stream. That's okay. But really, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this today is, for one, like I said, we needed some important things to talk about that are interesting in the hunting industry. And the other thing is, nobody else is talking about this stuff because there's so much going on in politics.
There is one group that's talking about it, and we'll get to that later.
Okay, but it's not widely talked about at all.
It's a pretty small group of people.
Any other day of the year or time of the year, something like this bill, especially in the hunting industry, would be headlines everywhere.
Yeah, we're a little preoccupied
across the top of the headlines in every newspaper in Alaska. Like, it would be huge. Right now, everybody's like, "Oh, look."
So
it's a subtext in a heading on everything else that's been happening.
I did see a paper today. It was actually at our office.
Okay.
Either someone had brought it in or someone...
People still read the paper?
Left it. Well, it wasn't the Fairbanks News-Miner. It was like something journal or something, but it was an Alaskan newspaper of some sort. But the headline on the front page was something to do with this executive order.
Was it? Okay.
And I thought that was really ironic, considering that we were going to talk about this tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, I haven't seen much about it.
Even within the state, there hasn't been a lot of talk about it.
Yeah.
Across the lower 48, I don't think it's really hardly even been mentioned. Obviously, there's some greenie conservation groups somewhere. What's the name? The Sierra Club.
Oh,
they're probably going nuts.
I'm sure they're kicking fit.
They're having a terrible time, and none of them are probably able to sleep right now. But
welcome to our last 4 years.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the other day when I saw somebody who was super upset, and I was like, well, now you know what I felt like.
As we watched federal institutions rip access away from us for the last 4 years.
But starting with, I think, one of the most controversial things in the state,
yes,
for a while here was Ambler Road.
Yep.
And it still is.
Mm-hmm.
It was shut down by BLM under the previous administration, basically given no chance to go forward.
Yep.
Well, that has been opened back up.
Yep.
In this executive order, basically the order is to review the fact that it was shut down and why it was, and to, obviously with the idea that it potentially could be allowed to go through.
Not only just review, but like go in and do another study on
basically, do another study because we don't trust the one that was done before.
Completely redo the study.
Right.
Objectively look at it and present the facts.
Yeah.
And if it's feasible to do without actually doing what everybody says it could do to the environment, then we need to do it.
So I think, to preface that, we need to talk, if you want to go ahead and read the section 1 of this executive order real quick.
That's just kind of the overview.
Yeah.
And this is just the top there. Section 1, background. The state of Alaska holds an abundant and largely untapped supply of natural resources, including, among others, energy, mineral, timber, and seafood. Unlocking this bounty of natural wealth will raise the prosperity of our citizens while helping to enhance our nation's economic and national security for generations to come. By developing these resources to the fullest extent possible, we can help deliver price relief for Americans, create high-quality jobs for our citizens. Ameliorate, sorry, I got twisted up in my words there. Ameliorate our trade imbalances, augment the nation's exercise of global energy dominance, and guard against foreign powers weaponizing energy supplies in theaters of geopolitical conflict. Unleashing this opportunity, however, requires an immediate end to the assault on Alaska's sovereignty and its ability to responsibly develop these resources for the benefit of the nation. It is, therefore, imperative to immediately reverse the punitive restrictions implemented by the previous administration that specifically target resource development on both state and federal lands in Alaska.
So that right there gives you an idea of what the goal of this is.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
And this, we are talking about this before you think we're just getting into Alaska land and, mining and oil politics. This is specifically things that relate to hunting in Alaska.
There is a specific whole paragraph of an order.
There's multiple paragraphs specifically related to hunting and other things in other projects like the Ambler Road that affect hunting.
Absolutely.
So the section 2 is basically telling what, the section 1 outlined the purpose. Section 2 gives some specific guidelines to that purpose.
Yep.
Section 2A, fully avail itself of the United States to fully avail itself of Alaska's vast lands and resources. And I'm just paraphrasing these here. Section B, efficiently and effectively maximize the development and production of the natural resources. C,
both on federal and
Yes.
state lands. It keeps saying that.
Yeah. Expedite the permitting and leasing of energy and natural resource projects. Prioritize the development of Alaska's liquefied natural gas potential. And then section 3. Anyway, there's a lot more like specific actions and things that can be done.
Yep.
We're not going to get into all of the legalese here.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on, but now we're getting into all of the specific actions. And
a lot with the Arctic National Wildlife
yes,
Refuge.
that's
with
another
oil exploration.
And that's another big one from a few years back.
Coastal plain oil
there was
and
a
gas leasing
huge
program.
thing in the hunting industry.
Yes.
Between Sitka gear and meat eater, and people who would never listen and support meat eater again, and people who were burning their Sitka gear. And I hope we've kind of gotten past that phase of responses to things. And I kind of hope that some of these companies just stay out of it. Or give an opinion, but keep it as an opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not come out and endorsing one thing or another.
Don't turn it into a virtue signaling party.
Now, you and I have both spent time in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Yep.
And we have also both worked on the North Slope.
Yep.
Not specifically on oil. You haven't specifically worked on oil drill rigs and stuff. I have a little bit. But I can tell you from both of those experiences, I can tell you a couple things that you probably would be inclined to agree with. And that is that in Alaska, to kind of just to preface the idea, what I think about these opening of these things. When drilling is done, when mining is done, when any of that kind of stuff is done, especially in the modern level, it's all done in such a way that when they leave, there's a few rocks left on the tundra where they were. Because they put foam down, they do all this stuff. There's all these regulations they must comply with to keep everything nice. It is cleaner than the Walmart parking lot in Dead Horse, Alaska. And Dead Horse isn't even run.
There's no Walmart in Dead Horse, but
that's it. The Walmart parking lot in anywhere in the country is one of the filthiest places you can treat, right? But when I say it's cleaner than the Walmart parking lot, I mean you're not supposed to step out of your truck and pee on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? When you fill your vehicle, you must use a containment system underneath the gas pump. There's all these specific things you must abide by to keep everything as clean as possible.
Yeah.
That and infrastructure like this in Alaska, whether it's oil rigs, pipelines, roads, these things overall do not seem to significantly affect wildlife movement.
Where are all the caribou along the haul road?
Next to the road and the pipeline.
They hang out by the pipeline.
And people make fun of, specifically Steve Ranella has made fun of the fact that there's a picture of caribou in the pipeline. He says because they like the heat from the pipeline, people point to that picture. Well, it's not just a picture. If you've spent any time up here in the wintertime working, driving the road, hunting or not, you see the caribou, especially in the winter, along the pipeline. Why? Because it provides a little bit of heat from the oil, and more vegetation grows around it, so it's easier for them to find forage. There's a picture in one of the camps in Dead Horse of Dead Horse and nothing but caribou. Through and around, as far as the eye can see, there's just caribou everywhere. They don't care that there's a whole town there. They don't. It doesn't really seem to affect them.
They use it for shade in the summertime.
And I said all that to say that, you know what? I'm all for all of this. I really don't think it's going to affect hunting in general. It's not going to interrupt what is known as, the place that people love to hunt in Anwar and all that kind of stuff. It's not really going to affect almost any of that.
Well, and this too, like the coastal plain is
correct.
what they're specifically talking about, right? They're not talking about going into the mountains and, setting up roads and massively impacting the areas where there is more hunting.
Specifically with Anwar, they're not.
Right. They're talking about the coastal plain.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot of action going on out there.
You're talking about up on the flat, on the tundra, where, there's a little bit of caribou.
Yeah.
Maybe a few bears wander through, but you're not going to really affect hunting or wildlife for that matter.
No.
And when they're, like I said, when they're done, you'll never know they were there. They're required to fill all the holes. Everything they do, they're required to fix.
Well, and just to play devil's advocate here, right?
Yeah.
If after this presidential term is over and there is a change in political leanings by the next president,
Mm-hmm.
and he or she comes in and says, here's my set of executive orders, and it is to rescind all of these orders for Alaska that Trump just put in.
Yeah.
If that happened, and there was, in fact, here in the next 4 years, if we end up building a lot of, if we end up moving a lot of new rigs and setting up new drill sites.
Yeah,
and
infrastructure for oil exploration
Right.
and development.
And if the next president comes in and says, do away with all that, get out, it would be gone as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And they would do an excellent job of cleaning up after themselves.
Yeah, the job they do cleaning up is
It's
incredible.
not going to leave a lasting imprint on the
Right.
land
Right.
or affect the wildlife.
You might have some dead grass.
Sure.
But not
it's
from
tundra.
chemicals, just because they covered it up with some rock and some foam for a
Right.
few years.
But it's from tundra, and nobody lives there. They're not doing this
Right.
around a village area where people rely
Right.
on subsistence hunting, and that's how some of the media loves to portray it. Well, you're affecting the subsistence
Right.
lifestyle of these locals that live out there. Not true.
So I think it's fairly clear where I'm coming from on this.
Yep.
Is I've pretty much always been open. I've always been for drilling in Anwar.
Yeah.
I don't think it really affects the hunting. I don't think it affects the wildlife.
Yeah.
Even what you're required to do as a camper or a hunter in Anwar, you have this set of regulations in a booklet you're given. If somebody's given the opportunity to give it to you, it's given to you, and you must do all of these things. Carry all your trash out. All these kind of things you're supposed to do in general on public land, but aren't enforced as strongly. No, in Anwar, you can get in huge trouble.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's great that we have
Sure.
a place like that up
Yep.
here where, and while I don't agree with all of this restrictions, most of them make sense. So that's Anwar. Now we
Yeah.
talked about Ambler Road.
Yeah. Ambler Road's probably the most hotly contested amongst hunters.
I think so.
right
I
now.
think overall within the state, most people agree that drilling in Anwar is a good thing, especially even among the hunting people here, among hunters anyway.
Okay.
There's definitely a subset of the population that aren't really hunters, or who are, but maybe don't spend as much time at it as we do.
I know of some hunters that don't like it, but they have an open mindset of, well,
Yeah,
might not be my favorite thing in the world, but I get it.
right. But it's not there's not a hostile from the hunting side of things. There's not this hostile thing. I guess they understand that
Right.
it's necessary,
Right.
right? And that it's good for the state.
A lot of Alaskans think that way.
Ambler Road, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is
That's where the divide starts.
this huge hot button topic, and I think a lot of it has to do with big money from environmental and conservation groups. Everything I've seen about it is like, well, once again, there's a road up there. There's a road going all the way. It's about 500 miles from Fairbanks to Dead Horse. And it doesn't seem to affect the migration of anything. Right? Now, I think for me, the issue of whether or not a road should go in doesn't affect whether or not anything's going to migrate. I think that's nonsense. It comes more to access into the Brooks Range. Easy access for hunting, for everybody and their brother to be able to now access much more of it.
Mhm.
Even if it still has, say, a 5-mile corridor,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more of it available on foot from a short distance.
Now, for folks that might not know what a 5-mile corridor is, give a little bit of
Okay,
background to that.
Right now, the Dalton Highway essentially punches straight through the Brooks Range. And so you have this small section. What is it, like 3 different hunting units intersecting at that point?
Game management units?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. There's
right where it punches through the Brooks and
Yeah.
where they all kind of intersect because
Yeah.
of the way management units are laid out based on geography.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but in and amongst all of that, and there's actually a lot of it you cannot hunt right now because of federal restrictions.
Yeah. I think that's
However,
probably gonna
there's more
change.
about that in this that we'll talk about.
Right.
But there on the Dalton Highway, starting at the Yukon River all the way to Dead Horse, there is a 5-mile corridor for rifle hunting. You must be 5 miles off of the edge of the road to take something with a firearm. And
Or
there is
crossbow.
also no motorized access.
Right.
Right. And so you can bow hunt in that 5-mile corridor,
Archery only.
but there's no motorized access.
Right.
And so if you want to sheep hunt in the Brooks Range on foot off the road, you must hike at least 5 miles.
If you want to gun hunt.
If you want to rifle hunt.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Right. And I think the sheep in there are probably skittish enough that you're not going to have much luck with a bow, but you never know.
There's some guys that do it, and
Really? In the corridor?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh,
like
yeah.
more recently?
Relatively speaking.
Really?
I mean, obviously not since the closures from the
yeah.
feds, but prior to that, oh, yeah.
Huh.
Absolutely.
So the Ambler basically punches in just south side going west into the Brooks.
Yeah.
About 200 miles?
Yeah, it's something around there. I thought it was 100 and something miles, but doesn't it go like real close from Coldfoot? It just cuts west on the south side.
Yeah, I mean, Coldfoot's right up against the base of the...
Yeah.
But
it just cuts due west along the south slope of the Brooks Range. And a lot of the pushback, at least that I've seen...
211 miles.
Oh, is it really that
Yeah.
long? I thought it was 180 something for some reason.
So here's the BLM sheet.
And folks can find this where?
Well, I just Googled it. This is on BLM.gov, though.
Okay.
This is the facts sheet about the road.
And so it goes through a section of the National Wildlife Refuge, the Gates of the Arctic National Park.
Yeah, I mean,
which
it's
is
just
on the west side of the Dalton.
But 211 miles over is a long ways.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is get over to Ambler and the Ambler mineral belt, and there's a lot of mining, and it's specifically a
cobalt,
copper, and a type of copper that's over there that's extremely valuable and used a lot today.
Was that bornite?
Bornite, yeah. I think it's something to do with copper. I don't by any means claim to know all of that.
Conductors type precious metals.
Anyhow, obviously it's enough that people want to put a 211-mile road into wilderness, and you talk about not an easy place to put a road.
No.
But they want to do it. And initially, I'm sure that it won't be open to the public. I say that. I'm sure it will be open to residents of Ambler. I think that's a big thing. Most, I believe, of the residents of Ambler, at least initially, wanted this road.
I'm not sure about that.
They wanted the mine. Initially, they did.
It
was huge, a ton of support for it.
Okay.
The amount of money it would bring into the people of Ambler is huge, because their goal of the mine was to employ almost all locals. Right? It would be huge for a community like that, and all of a sudden to have a road to your town. Can you imagine that?
Right. Yeah.
When you were, a couple hour flight out of Fairbanks, if you could even fly directly out of Fairbanks. I don't know how, all these villages we have with little airstrips and stuff. And
you're catching a Wright's flight somewhere.
Right. Some of the bigger ones have daily or multiple daily flights to them, but this is not one of those villages.
Right.
Anyhow, from what I understand, the people there want it. At least they did. And there was the state wanted it, which makes sense.
Oh,
it's good for the state financially.
The state wants it,
very good for the state.
Yeah.
BLM didn't, right, under the previous administration, with this executive order. I've got to find which.
Right there.
Was that it?
Yep.
Oh, right there, yeah.
Plus temporary moratorium on all activities and privileges granted to any party pursuant to the record of decision signed on January 27th. We'll read forward here, which is referred to in, quote, notice of availability of the Ambler Road Final Supplement Environmental Impact Statement of Alaska, end quote. So basically it reopens, and then it goes on to say, order to review such record of decision in light of alleged legal deficiencies and for consideration of relevant public interests, and as appropriate, conduct a new comprehensive analysis of such deficiencies, interests, and environmental impacts. Yeah.
And
so
basically the record of decision.
Yeah. Right. So basically it just opens it back up. They're not saying that, hey, we're going to build the road now. It's just open it back up for discussion.
Yeah. It looks like, because it also does say they want to reinstate the record of decision signed July 23rd, 2020 by BLM and the Army Corps of Engineers, that record of decision actually gave the option to
explore it.
Yes. And that was
it was the opening of the
and
conversation.
that was under the administration previous to the previous administration.
Right.
So open the conversation back up, try to get that road built, I really think is what they're pushing for there. It seems very clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And very recently, the new Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, was confirmed. And this is going to be his purview, right?
Very different direction from the old Secretary of the Interior.
A little bit.
Very different.
A little bit different background in his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
There was actually some discussion, and I don't know if this was really a thing, but that Dunleavy may have been up for Secretary of the Interior. Possibly.
I heard some rumors about that.
And perhaps there was a discussion. I think he decided, if it was his choice, he probably decided that he was better suited as the governor of Alaska, and then to work with a Secretary of the Interior so that way, because he knows everything about all this stuff. And while a lot of us have felt that he's not been real strong on social issues that we would like, when it comes to development in Alaska, he's been very, very strong. Now, Ambler Road affects hunting because, well, people think it's going to affect wildlife movement. I don't think it really will. Obviously, initially, it'll be something new. The animals will take a minute to figure it out, but they're pretty good about that stuff. What it really will affect, and this is where I think a lot of people have a problem with it from the hunting side, is some people are really open to it. Yeah, this is great. This gives more people the opportunity to get in to a place where they wouldn't have ever been able to even afford the idea of a charter. Because what it costs to get flown in is a ton of money.
Yeah. Charter flights in the Brooks.
Versus what it would cost to drive up to the Brooks, drive west 100 miles, park somewhere, and hike in. Well, I would do it in a heartbeat. If we were able to do that, we would both do it.
It'll definitely be a road trip that at least I make.
Oh, it'll be a road trip, and you'll probably make a few hikes too, huh?
Yep.
Probably a lot.
Probably.
It's just.
I won't say that I won't have a bow and a rifle. If suddenly there was 200 miles of the Brooks Range now open to hike into, that you can hike into relatively quickly, 5 miles, or whatever it would take to get into sheep country. A lot more.
But you know what I mean.
Right. Now, that particular area, if you go back to that map,
the map wasn't super clear on it.
No. But if you look at all of this in here, right? So this is National Park Wilderness area. And that's not going to be available. Now this land in here of this color, I'm not sure of the ownership of.
State.
Is that all state?
Yes, it is.
Well, there you go.
So if this road got put in, that state land would be open to hunt, period. No matter what happened in the next administration. As long as regulation and everything stayed the same way it is in the state, and there's no reason to believe it wouldn't. But state land, for the most part, stays open.
Is that state land? Because what's this over here?
That's BLM.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I mean, you got a lot.
Right.
I mean, you've got
because it was
a
BLM.
ton of stuff available and open here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. It to me, it seems like a lot of the debate, even within the hunting community that I have seen, is that number one, it crosses a lot of water.
Yeah.
People are concerned about fish. They're concerned about affecting the waterways, right? They're concerned about pollution or bridges or a crash that could happen, if you have a wreck or some kind of a contamination or disturbance of a waterway, right? They're concerned about the fish, which is, I think that's a valid concern, right? And especially in some of these rivers that can get salmon runs. If you look at the greater state of Alaska salmon situation.
I mean, in all fairness, this isn't really the same.
No, but look at it from this perspective. If there are any salmon
I know.
that go through this area in any one of these waterways, that's going to be a talking point.
Yeah.
And they're going to point to the fact that the rest of the state is severely struggling with the salmon population to the point where we are closing down areas to salmon fisheries because we're very, very low in numbers. And that goes to a whole different can of worms that people have their reasons why they think that exists or doesn't exist. But
the fish in the waterways is a big concern. The other concern is just a development into an area that they want to see remain wild, which you know this. I kind of can sympathize with that a little bit.
Do, yeah.
The drilling and the exploration or the natural gas pipeline, which he's interested in doing as well, and that is included in that executive order.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily affect a lot of the hunting opportunities in that area, right? That's a lot of coastal plain type stuff. The Ambler Road, though, goes at the base of the mountain range, and there's a lot more hunting access, right? And there's a little bit more development when you have a road that, again, there are groups within Alaska even that were, when the Ambler Road was previously open to discussion, there were a lot of groups that were very adamant about, if the road does go in, we want access as hunters.
Yeah.
Right? Just like the Haul Road, we want access to it.
Right. The Haul Road initially was not open for private.
Right.
It was only commercial.
You know if that was a couple of years before that was open, or if it was just a short period of time?
It was a significant period of time. I believe it was.
Was it really?
Shut down, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the exact dates, but I believe it was for quite a period of time. But you got to keep in mind that a lot of that was the safety thing, because you're talking when there were hundreds of trucks up and down that road a day.
Yeah, back at the beginning.
Back in the day,
right.
And now
back when there was a lot more money.
If you see 20 trucks when you're heading one way on that road, you say, "Man, there's a lot of trucks on the road today," and that was nothing. That is nothing compared to the amount of road trucks that used to be on that road.
Yeah, even if we drive up there and we say, "Wow, that's a busy day,"
yeah,
exactly.
It's not.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But so that there are advocacy groups in Alaska that have said, if you put the road in, not even taking a stance on whether or not you should.
Right.
If you do it, then you need to give us access as residents, right? And if you open up the road, then non-residents are going to be up there too. I don't know that you could possibly even begin to speculate that you could control it for resident-only use. But the original discussion was, if they privatized the road and they only allowed people that lived in an accessible point on that road to use it, or commercial use, then you couldn't use it. And that didn't fly. So then you have the other group that's saying, we don't want the road at all because it's going to it's going to take away from the area, right? It's a major development and it's public access. It's not like if a drill rig goes in on the North Slope that now that becomes a public access point, right?
It's not the way that.
So that's a little bit different for me, and I can sympathize a little bit more with that perspective.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from the big picture of things and trying to become more energy independent, I mean, here just in the upcoming weekend that we're recording this, we're looking at some tariffs that are going into effect, and his whole plan is America first.
Yeah, which I think he's right in, and I don't think a feeling, no offense to you or anyone else that feels this way, but I don't think a feeling about losing a wild place that we're really not losing. In all reality, sure, now people can walk in places they couldn't before, right? Because I guarantee there'd be a corridor on this road.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be, yeah.
If there's not, we're gonna try to get that instated ourselves. I would imagine we'd be going to some meetings to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we wouldn't be the only ones.
Yeah.
However, all that aside, I think a feeling about the fact that we're kind of losing a place that was wild before and really hard to get into and access over America's national security and us actually being number one. I think the latter is far, far and above.
I agree.
How any of us feel about any of this. I like the idea of the road going in. I've always been you know this about me. I'm very pro development in these things and cut it all down, but drill. I'm not quite that way, but like. I really miss the America that I read about that wanted to dam the Yukon River for electricity. I don't think we should have done that.
No.
But it's just one of those things that you read and think this wouldn't even get consideration today, much less a full study done by the Army Corps of Engineers, which was done, and it was pushed for and even campaigned on by presidents to dam the Yukon River. If it was done, we wouldn't have waterfowl in North America probably today. At least a lot less than we do. It wouldn't be this low. We've got duck numbers losing. So they're a little bit lower in this part of the country than they used to be. It wouldn't be like that. No, we wouldn't. maybe even have ducks because, the nesting ground, everything. Anyway, I miss the America that I never lived in that believed in things that way. Instead of seeing something like this road and, being these conservation groups that are just so anti any development.
Well, and there's
And when I say conservation group, primarily
terms.
I'm referring to environmentalist and Sierra Club type anti anything. They're anti-hunting as well.
There's a big difference between conservation and preservation.
Okay,
and
you got a point there.
a lot of those groups are not conservation minded because the North American wildlife model is formed around conservation.
It is
not preservation.
But most of these places call themselves conservation.
Right, exactly, and that they have muddied that term to the point.
Same with environmentalism.
Right.
I think most of us are environmentalists to some point. But
Sure.
the term is so
skewed, yeah.
If I tried to tell my dad he was an environmentalist, he'd say I was nuts.
yeah,
right?
He'd get mad at you.
Yeah, but
yeah.
And he might listen to this and say, "What are you talking about?" But to some extent, he doesn't want more development in certain places, right?
Sure. Sure.
He would be really mad if somebody punched a road through his backyard.
Yep.
So would most of us.
Yep.
Right?
Right. Exactly. But from the perspective of the groups that are against this, there are preservation-minded groups that want it completely taken out of the conversation. No Ambler Road, no more drilling in Anwar,
right.
No more exploration, no gas pipeline, none of that.
Yeah.
Keep it as it is. And if anything, do less.
Yeah.
Those are not the groups that we're talking about, though, right? It's very hard, if not impossible, to sway the opinions of groups like that.
Mm-hmm.
What we're more talking about is within the hunting community, where you actually have conservationists that are very concerned about a project like this, and they believe it to be a threat to either migration or habitat, or and with habitat comes fish in the waterways,
right.
Because it does cross a lot of streams and waterways. It does. That's not a deniable fact. But like you said, in the bigger picture, what is this actually going to impact? The areas that are closed to hunting are still going to remain closed to hunting in that area. And in theory, if we have a 5-mile corridor in place, just like the Dalton Highway, and I'm sure that road is not going to go all the way back to the mine, at least for public access, there's going to be a limitation to some extent to how far you can go.
The mine will have some kind of cutoff.
Right.
Yeah.
There's going to be, I would imagine, some kind of a gate, or no one past this point except if you're driving truck to the mine or you're a resident of this village. Or at the very minimum, no hunting off the road in this area at all.
Usually there's a gate, and at some point you're just like, nope, nobody beyond this point.
Sure. But to that point, though, even with that, all the hunting that would take place in that road prior to that, between the Dalton and whatever that cutoff point is, I don't think that sacrificing that and giving that to people is more important one way or the other than the benefits that we're going to get both as a state and as a country.
Yep.
That's more important to me.
I 100% agree.
Even though I understand, and you're bringing in a big development, right? It is going to make a difference in some way or another. I don't think it's the big bad wolf that people like to trump it up to be.
Yeah.
But
that's been a lot of my discussion today. I agree, I guess, has been like trying to justify a lot of the things that people don't like about it.
Right.
Even you talk about the waterways thing, and I say, well, look at the way we deal with this stuff anymore. We do it in the best way we possibly can.
Yeah.
And yes, you have accidents, and yes, you have spills, but in the grand scheme of things, one truck tipping over, it doesn't really affect that much. And yeah, it might kill some fish, but it's not going to overall.
But what's more important?
What's more important, national security or a few fish? Hey, there's another executive order, and I'll just leave this where it's at because it doesn't affect us up here, but there's another executive order, and it's specifically relating to California, and the executive order is called Putting People Over Salmon.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because of Like I said, I'm just going to leave that where it's at. But it makes sense. People know what's going on.
Yep.
And some people are going to be really mad at something like that if they haven't heard about it yet. And some people will get it. But it makes sense. If people are dying and losing their livelihood because of any kind of animal, that's just wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, we need to live from a human flourishing perspective. And I think part of human flourishing is the ability to get out and get into the wilderness, which, by the way, we can only do in a developed society, right?
Right.
Hiking in the mountains is a good day in a developed society, right? In an undeveloped society, it's a nightmare, right? It's a nightmare scenario to be out hiking in the mountains in a place where you don't have the development to support what you need to both be confident in and of yourself, and to have what we have today in backup and emergency devices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even you reel back the tape 100 years ago in Alaska, and you read a book like Alaska's Wolfman.
Yeah, but even 100 years ago, we had a lot of development.
Sure, but you had a trail from Valdez to Fairbanks.
Right, you had a trail,
which is now the Richardson Highway.
But because of manufacturing in the lower 48, you had a ton of stuff at your disposal. Reel back the tape 300 years, right? And hiking in the mountains in Alaska wasn't just something you did for fun.
Right.
You can drive down from where we live, and there's a dozen different places you can go hike in mountains and in hills and have a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Take the road away, and you're in a nightmare scenario. All of a sudden, boom, just like all of a sudden, everything's changed. You've got days to figure out how to survive. Right.
Yeah,
you get what the idea?
Yep.
Somebody, a very pro oil person,
I see your point.
It was very pro oil, put that on X the other day, and I should have saved it so I could read it exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It was, it was like, he's exactly right.
Sure.
This society we live in today allows us to be able to go enjoy nature. But nature is not enjoyable when you're trying to survive. Yeah. You don't think of it that way.
I can see your point there.
We like to think of our ancestors as these romantic people who just lived off the land, but every day was a fight for survival.
Right. Yep.
Every single day, with a very low life expectancy.
Yep.
And it wasn't enjoyable to them to just live off the land and all this kind of stuff. They didn't have a warm bed to go home to after 2 weeks of being in the mountains. Right. Which, by the way, what do? Not to go too crazy here, but we go spend, say, 2 weeks or a month at the most, maybe in the mountains hunting. And let's say you don't have a base camp you're working out of, you're coming back to, or showers or whatever are available. Let's just say you go spend 2 weeks or a month in the mountains. By the time you get out, you're out of food. Right. You're out of food. If you've been in there that long, you've probably rationed. Okay. All of your gear is soaking wet.
Yep.
Or, maybe you have good gear that dries out and all that kind of stuff, and you have systems and all that stuff, but things are starting to lose their loft. Right? By the end of that time,
you're starting to count squares on your roll of toilet paper.
Everything is everything's great if you get out on time, even if you have to stretch it a few days.
Right.
Give it a few more weeks.
Yeah.
It ain't a good time anymore.
Right.
That's the kind of things they make movies about, because this guy almost died, but he hiked an extra 100 miles because his plane didn't pick him up because it crashed.
Well, and you and I have both heard stories from old timer guides that got dropped off with a client somewhere, and then a lake froze over.
Right.
And they can't get picked up by the float plane anymore. And so it's in hunker down and survival mode. And sometimes they couldn't even get a food drop from the air. So they're tunneling into the snow caves and trying to shovel out their tents every day with sticks, because they don't have a snow shovel. They didn't think it would snow. And in one case, I think I told you this story from a fella, he was stuck in there for weeks, and it got cold and it never warmed up. People were getting frostbitten, and they were just out caribou hunting.
Right.
And there's other stories of guys that'll get stuck in a place. I read a book a while ago. I don't think you've read this one, but it was an older guide. And he had a situation happen. I don't remember all the details of it, but him and I think it was a packer and maybe a client had to walk out to a different spot. And it was a long walk, and they had almost no food. And it was starting to snow. It was getting to the end of September, end of the season type of deal, and they couldn't get picked up. Communication was limited, if any, and they had been told that their last contact was, if we can't get you here, then you have to walk all the way to here. And it was some crazy distance I want to say it was close to a 100-mile walk. And that was at the end of a hunt that they had packed enough food for that hunt.
Right.
By the time they had to get out, like you said, they're out of food. It's not fun anymore. And that guy recounts that story as we were in survival mode. Like they had a couple of little single packets of like Philadelphia cream cheese that they would eat one a day per person, and maybe half of a candy bar or something, and that was all they had. And they're picking berries, and they're having to melt snow for water because the creeks are starting to freeze over, and then they're out of fuel for their stoves, and so they can't melt anything anymore. And it gets really hard really fast. And so, yeah, I hadn't really heard it from that perspective before, because we don't really think about it that way.
But
you know, we tend to think of it as this borderline romanticized experience, right? And that's great. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, you kind of forget that without any development at all, and this all got here from development.
Right. Like
this town exists from mining. Fairbanks was a mining town. That's the only reason we're even on the map. That's an perspective to have on it.
Because food's not the only thing, right? What about battery? Right.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So now we carry solar panels a lot and all that kind of stuff, but still, it's just it suddenly takes, you just really start to think about it. And yeah, it sounds great in theory. And we've had fun talking about, what's that show? Where, the survival show where they Alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about like, well, what if they just, picked people like us and they sent us out there and we'd thrive, right? And given the opportunity, possibly we could.
Yeah.
Right. Given the opportunity to prepare in the right time of year, right? In the right, the right material. Like I said, given the opportunity to prepare, because what would you really need to do to prepare? You'd start really reading a lot of books and practicing a ton of stuff.
I'd start making some phone calls to some people that have been on the show.
That too, right? You would just really start, right? And then given the opportunity, you could thrive in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
But at some point, the weather's going to start getting cold.
Yeah, it always does.
But we go in with thousands of dollars of gear. Thousands and thousands of dollars of gear. Even the guys that are doing it cheap are still usually have several $1,000s at least in gear that they're going in with. And you've got limited ammo, right? At most, you've probably got 20 rounds on a backpack hunt.
Yeah.
Right? You're usually not carrying a handgun. You've got a knife, you've got some tools, you've got some things. Sure, you could survive.
Right.
But you're not going to be having a great time of it.
Yeah. You could survive, but on how many bullets worth of time?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Now, you say, well, could 20 bullets last you a long time?
Sure.
Potentially. But at some point, are you even going to be able to cut that meat because it's frozen and it's 20 below? Right? And are you going to be able to find wood to build a fire?
Yeah. Or in the summer, are you going to be able to preserve it?
Yeah, exactly. It just takes this perspective of, it's great. I love being in the wilderness. And it's true, we do.
Yep.
But it's a privilege of the advanced society that we live in, and oil.
Mm-hmm.
It's only possible because of oil and the synthetic things that we all love to use.
Right.
Anyhow.
Yeah.
Even the nature lovers that go into the woods and they don't take guns and they go float down rivers in Anwar and feel good about themselves and wearing their purple pants. Even they, I could say especially them, in a survival situation, and by the way, everything they're wearing and using was made with oil. So anyway,
petroleum products.
Not to really take a position on all this or anything, but I could go either way on development.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else in there that we should talk about?
Yeah, there is. There definitely is. We really.
Oh
sorry.
yeah.
Let's find
right there.
Which one? Which one?
Is that one it?
No,
that's not it.
There's two specific.
Yeah, I think they were back-to-back paragraphs.
Okay, so here's one. This is. I'm not good. This is
19.
Yeah. Rescind the National Park Service final rule entitled Alaska Hunting and Trapping in National Preserves, and reinstate the National Park Service final rule entitled Alaska Hunting, Trapping in National Preserves. So I missed rescind the one from July 3rd, 2024, and reinstate the one from July 9th, 2020 in its original form. That is specifically regarding bear baiting and trapping rules on National Preserve land in Alaska. If that affects you, you know what it is.
Yep.
And I guess we'll just leave that there.
Yep. That got plenty of press when it came out.
It sure did. And what is that? Hunting in dens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All the traditional hunting practices
Killing
in Alaska.
bears over donuts.
Most of which isn't.
Come on.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Come on.
So here's one that's probably controversial to some.
There's one we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to read
20.
this one real quick.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that
Number
one
20,
too.
deny the pending request to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service to establish an indigenous sacred site in the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. That's a big deal to somebody, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but
that's basically saying get out of our way.
So the idea, a little bit of background on this, I believe, was the idea of getting this put in by the Fish and Wildlife Service was just another way of permanently stopping any oil drilling.
Exactly.
In there.
Yeah. And this is him saying you're not doing that to block us out.
No, that's a no. Period.
Right. Exactly.
That's not a oh, look at it and do another study. No. That's absolutely not.
Yeah.
There's
a politically driven idea by the.
There's a waterway, navigable waterway orders, and there's some stuff here like provide recommendations to navigable waterways subject to the Equal Footing Doctrine in the Submerged Lands Act of 1953. So bringing back some stuff back to old laws.
Yeah, and to restore ownership of said waterways to the state
yes.
as appropriate.
Yeah, so some big deals for the state of Alaska, just giving the state of Alaska more power.
Yeah.
So
giving their due power back.
So here we go. This is a big. This is really what it's all come down to.
Yeah, this is it.
22. Direct, or XXII, if you don't know how to read that, which it takes me a minute. Direct all bureaus of the Department of the Interior to consider the Alaskan cultural significance of hunting and fishing and the statutory priority of subsistence management required by the ANILCA to conduct meaningful consultation with the state fish and wildlife management agencies prior to enacting land management plans or other regulations that affect the ability of Alaskans to hunt and fish on public lands, and to ensure to the greatest extent possible that hunting and fishing opportunities on federal lands are consistent with similar opportunities on state lands. And then the rest of it goes on to 23. It says and at 23, but that is different. So do you want to kind of cover what the big deal about that is?
In the last 4 years, how many closures have we seen?
I don't know the number. You probably do.
I don't know the exact number, but I got tired of talking about it.
Yeah.
It happened so often.
And in a variety
of places too. Right.
Yeah.
And the extension that happened last year, I didn't find it until somebody else was able to send me a link and said, here it is. It was so buried and hidden in the paperwork. It wasn't like an announcement. And this was particularly in reference to the Central Brooks Range closure for sheep hunting. And I think it included
basically all BLM land in the Brooks Range. Yeah.
Well, right. And that was specifically around that.
Not all, but.
Well, and you even saw the signs.
Yeah.
Right? Driving north, you'd see the signs. Hunting or sheep hunting closed in this game management unit within this corridor. And it's a big area.
It is a huge area.
Very big area.
And it pushed all the hunters into this spot on state land.
Yeah. The only spot that remained open.
And you talk to anybody who hunted there wasn't any sheep.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hunters.
Yeah. Everybody was looking at that loophole.
Because they just pushed all the sheep into the BLM land. That's what happened.
Yeah. And so what happened there was they were able, they illegally, in my opinion, went around the due process of the state, which the Alaska Constitution allows for independent management of its natural resources. Yeah. And wildlife is a natural resource according to the Constitution of the state of Alaska. We are allowed to manage our own natural resources per the state. Well, federal groups, the Federal Board of Subsistence, even some things with ANILCA, were using emergency closures as a loophole to subvert due process and go in and say, this is closed. This is federal land. This is closed. The animals are in a dangerously low population level, despite the state of Alaska saying, no, it kind of matches everything else in the whole area.
Right.
But there were some odd things that went on there, and some individuals that played a massive role in putting that idea to the forefront.
Right.
That ended up resulting in a full-on closure.
Yeah.
And it lasted a few years. And at the end of those few years, it was supposed to come up for review. Instead of that, almost to sheep season last year, they extended the closure. Another, I forget how long the extension was.
Several more years, yeah.
Which is exactly what we all said would happen when the first closure happened, right? We all said, well, once they lock up an area, it never comes back. They don't like giving access back. And so that extension happened, and it was very quiet. It was extremely hard to find. The signs didn't come down on the road, and so everybody just kind of figured, okay, well, it just extended and still closed. The problem within our state is, and especially in relation to the sheep hunting topic, which it's no secret in the hunting world that sheep are struggling in Alaska. And that's for a whole different discussion as far as predator numbers, tough winters and different conditions. But the problem with closing off an area like that had a lot of hunting in that area, a lot of guys like to drive up there, hike off the road and go sheep hunting.
Yep.
Or even fly into some of those areas and go sheep hunting. That puts them all somewhere else.
Yep. It puts everybody.
It displaced all those guys that would have gone there, and now they all go somewhere else. And so now, as a result of that, other areas get more pressure.
It creates a lot more,
in a sheep hunting number that is already struggling right now in a lot of the state, and it just adds more pressure where it shouldn't be.
Right.
If that area remained open, and had they followed due process and listened to the Fish and Game Department of the state of Alaska and listened to their biologist and consulted the state of Alaska, as should have been the case from the beginning, that wouldn't have happened, because their numbers are lining up with numbers all across that area. There's no difference. There's an area west of there that has been closed for years that was supposed to be revisited to reopen and has not come back around for review. And people have just kind of forgotten that was ever even open to sheep hunting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. People just kind of forgot about it. And it really wasn't that terribly long ago. But it was the same type of situation where a couple of bad winters happened. They said, okay, let's close it down. And we'll reopen it when they're doing better.
Was that state or federal?
You guess.
Feds.
And now the numbers match. Those numbers out on the western side are no better than the numbers in the central area that they closed.
So it's not the hunting activity.
I'm just saying that doesn't add up, right? I'm not the biologist there,
right?
But I know enough about it that's not what's affecting it.
Yeah.
So the feds coming in and that specific part of this order requires those federal agencies to comply with, to conduct meaningful consultation with the state fish and wildlife management agencies prior to enacting land management plans or other regulations.
Well, and specifically to ensure to the greatest extent possible that hunting and fishing opportunities on federal lands are consistent with similar opportunities on state lands.
That's
basically
pretty black and white.
It seems very black and white. Thankfully, somebody in the administration knew the issue that was going on and put the right language in this executive order.
Exactly.
I probably have Don Jr. to thank for that, as my guess. And there's a good chance that he had a lot of influence. I'm sure. I know he has a lot of influence with his dad.
Yeah.
I'm
sure that
in a lot of these
role.
things. And
having someone that's been up here and hunted a lot.
Yeah, who understands. He's a big hunter and understands these things. And that was the biggest. That and then the what was that, 19 were some of the biggest things. There's a lot in here about Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of the Army and
Secretary of the Interior.
Well, Secretary of the Interior specifically is what most of the energy stuff is. There's a lot of energy stuff specifically related to Department of Defense.
Yes.
And that's all really.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about this executive order, whitehouse.gov, presidential actions. and then unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential. It's a great. I think personally, there's not really anything in here I don't like.
Yeah.
I think it's great. We're opening Alaska up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more, obviously, among those executive orders.
Right. And again, obviously we're biased one direction on this set of executive orders. This is probably one of the few times that we're ever really going to get very political on here. However, I think it's important to have open, transparent discussion about it and be willing to understand that times change. And sometimes our individual thoughts or opinions about something have to take a back seat when there's a bigger issue at hand. And I don't think anybody can really deny that we have bigger issues to deal with right now than worry about some of these concerns that have been raised in the past about some of these issues. So, yeah, I'm happy about it. I'm excited to see some of the developments. I think it'll be good for the state, good for the country, but things to watch for. And like I said earlier, some of these things could end up to the point where we end up voting on some of these things. So
these things?
Not necessarily. No. Obviously not these orders, but if some of these things go into review, for instance, I don't know how the Ambler Road project is going to go. If that's going to end up...
Unless there was a petition to shut it down, potentially. But I don't really see that happening.
You don't think so?
I don't think you get enough signatures.
I don't know about that.
This doesn't have the same... Okay, so we talked about Ambler Road as if it was the biggest hot button issue, but it's not. Pebble Mine is.
Was,
right? And they never got enough signatures to actually get it up for a vote.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if it ever... They always were trying... that was huge. There was people very, very for, people very, very against. I think overall, they killed it, right? Mm-hmm. Regardless of your views on it, I don't even really know how I feel about that one. But regardless of your views on the Pebble Mine, that was the biggest hot button topic when it comes to development. Ambler Road didn't replace it by any means. There's a lot of people...
But it has become the next...
It has become the next one. But I don't think there's enough people that feel as strongly about Ambler Road as they did about Pebble Mine.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with that.
I'm sure we may see a petition. I don't think it'll go anywhere. I think there's a broad enough understanding too across the state that this is good for Alaska and it's good for the nation.
Certainly for the economic standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think that what's important is that you learn to just accept what goes on. Like we said before, there was plenty that went on that we just had to deal with before that we didn't care for, but we didn't go out there and become outlaws over it.
No, and we wouldn't.
No.
Right. And we wouldn't ever encourage that.
No.
We're happy with the direction some of these things are going now, specifically.
And, as residents of the state, as people that live here year round, have a 9-to-5 job, and live in the middle of the state, we are directly affected by how the direction the state's economy goes.
Yeah.
We see that show up on grocery bills, on gas prices, on cost of living. There's a lot of things that trickle down from things like this.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think it's the right direction to take.
I think so. Yeah.
I think we've taken the back seat too long on some of these development things. And more importantly to me, and this is the selfish perspective of it, but I want those federal closures reversed.
Oh, yeah. Specifically in the hunting side of things.
Specifically for hunting and fishing. Right. Well, hunting, I want those federal closures
if we really wanted to stay
taken
non-political, we would have talked only about that.
Right.
But don't let this episode make you think this is what everything's about. This is the way every episode is of the show.
No.
When it comes to politics and whatnot. Obviously, we're not ashamed of what we believe.
No.
And we're not going to not say something.
I don't think that anybody should be ashamed of what they believe.
But most of our episodes, if you listen back, are not highly politicized like this one somewhat is. And considering the current political environment, this one's not. In the state of Alaska, it is. Most people, I think, in Lower 48, aside from those preservationists, environmentalists, which probably aren't really listening to this show anyway, aren't really going to have strong opinions. I don't know. Hey, let us know what you think.
Like we said, even if this was a set of executive orders going the other way, we would still cover it.
We would.
Because it's
not
relevant.
As happily.
No. Yeah, definitely not. But ultimately, it affects us.
It does, yeah.
And so, hopefully these areas that have been closed down to hunting access get opened back up, and that they go through due process. If they do have the desire to close an area, that they have to go through the state first, because that's how it should be.
Right.
The state is in control of its resources, not federal agencies or groups.
Yep.
Well, is that all we got?
I think that's enough for this episode.
I think so too.
There's, like I said, there's more in there. There's stuff about the roadless rule in the Tongass.
Yep.
There's stuff about other
Logging.
roads, other roads that are nowhere near as controversial, that are widely wanted in the state,
Yep.
and seem to be a good thing. And I think overall, even if you took away Anwar and Ambler out of this, which are by far the most, well, and maybe the roadless and Tongass, if you took even those three things out of this, overall, this would be huge for Alaska. Those three things, I think, make it even a bigger deal.
Yep.
By a lot, exponentially so. But for the state of Alaska, for the Alaska listeners to the program, this is huge. This is good, and I think we're all going to see across the board economic boom specifically because of these things.
Yeah. This will have a meaningful impact on us.
Right. Yeah.
So
see a reduction in inflation. That'd be nice. And this may help that happen more in Alaska than other places.
We'll see. But that aside, make hunting and fishing great again in Alaska.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I think my Can-Am's going to be worth a lot of money pretty quick here. Seeing as... Should I just leave that there?
I don't know
the
context.
Why? You don't know? Okay. So 25% tariffs on all goods coming out of Canada.
Oh, that's right.
Except for gas and oil. So that includes Can-Ams. So if I was going to sell it, I could probably sell it for a profit here pretty quick this spring, depending on how long this all lasts.
That's an interesting byproduct.
Anyway.
Well, we'll see you in the next episode, folks. Thanks to our partners of the show, Stealthy Hunter, Hammer Bullets, and Initial Ascent Packs.
That's right.
Make Alaska great again. We'll see you next time.